have experienced so many things in the last several weeks that have opened my eyes to my family dynamic and our relationships. And all this time I thought I had it pretty well figured out, and I knew all along that there was probably stuff I didn't know, or that I would come to know the healthier I got and as time marched on. And in the wake of losing my dad a couple weeks ago, there's been so much more than I ever knew that I've thought about or considered that's come to mind that I either hadn't explored before or hadn't thought of, it hadn't occurred to me, or new and interesting dynamics that I had not been aware of before. As people in my family grieve and express their grief, it's been extremely compelling to me how each of us has grieved the loss of my dad and how we deal with and process our emotions. If you've watched any of the other content on my channel, you are well aware of the fact that my parents have been divorced for roughly 20 years. And my dad was turning 78 this year. He didn't quite make it to see 78 years old. He's had a lot of medical issues this last year. It's been a really rough year for him. But my dad passed away at the end of January. And in the wake of him dying, it's been very busy and I've been very preoccupied, and it's taking me a long time to wrap my head around what has been going on. It has been a challenge putting together organized, well thought through, succinct content for you guys surrounding grief. So for the time being, I'm just putting together what I can and uploading it as I work through these different things, and there's a lot. I've been taking notes and jotting things down because things are overwhelming right now. But right off the bat, I wanted to mention to you my mom. So my mom and dad were divorced. They were amicable after a couple of years. My mom filed for divorce from him for shock value. I don't think she ever wanted a divorce from him, but she never learned her lesson with him that she can't taunt him and tease him. You can't expect to lash out or react to get your partner to behave at a manner that's like an abusive behavior. So my mom and her abusive victim mindset lashed out at my dad all the time and tried to, this was part of the norm for me growing up, was she tried to get some sort of reaction, any reaction out of my dad. So she threatened suicide a couple of times. She packed her bags and threatened to move out, but it never happened. I mean, there were extremes that were like red flags, huge red flags while I was growing up. She had very codependent tendencies, and she had a very borderline tendencies, and she had very narcissistic tendencies. If she was seen by a therapist and got diagnosed with anything, if she ever was willing to open herself up to help, there would probably be multiple diagnoses for her, because she is troubled, she is injured, she has a past that's riddled with a bunch of stuff, the extent to which I don't have real clear history on and details. It's all hush hush. And it was the big elephant in the room when I was growing up. My family, as far as I know, don't have a lot of details. I've asked my dad about it before to try to get some history and some information, and even he doesn't really know the whole story about her upbringing, or if he does know, he wasn't able to share, didn't feel comfortable sharing. In any case, this is how my mom has responded to the death of her ex-husband of 20 years, my dad. she has, now granted, I have wanted to reach out to my mom on multiple occasions in the wake of my dad's death to extend compassion and sympathy and comfort to her and just to give her a hug. But I have not been able to do that because a couple of my other siblings got to it before I could mentally prepare myself to do so. And then I heard what their experiences were with her afterwards before I got a chance to do it myself and extend my sympathies to her. And they collectively have not had good experiences with my mom. She has rejected and mocked their sympathy and judged them harshly, and she's judging all of us harsh. She's just lashing out at all of us for not jumping on the phone or running to her apartment to console her poor aching heart because she lost her ex-husband, and extend all this sympathy and pity and whatever it is she's seeking. Whatever we weren't able to do, it couldn't have possibly been enough. It would, in our own grief, which wasn't considered by her, of course, she was getting angry at us and retaliating and getting very jealous, and probably because in death, my dad was getting all of the attention from all 6 of the children and spouses and nieces and nephew or grandchildren and all this other stuff. So my mom had this anger and resentment and jealousy about the loss of her husband and how she's the one who lost her husband when they have been divorced for 20 years, and fought the entire time they were married. I take that back. That's an exaggeration. Their entire marriage wasn't fighting, but most of my childhood was. And then resents her children, pushes them away, and is angry with them because they're not giving her the proper amount or quick enough sympathy over her loss when she's been divorced from him for almost 20 years. Meanwhile, she hasn't picked up the phone or extended one iota of sympathy or compassion or grief or empathy towards any of us. As far as I know, not one of my siblings, and I certainly haven't gotten even an email or a response to any messages. I sent her an instant message to say, Mom, I love you. I know you're struggling and hurting right now. I sent her a little video of my dad. I said, I sent her 2 or 3 messages over the last couple of weeks and have said things like that. And I also told her something my dad told me in the hospital, the 3rd day before he died. He said, your mom and I, he said, yeah, we divorced and everything, but I will always love your mom. I will always love your mom. Because we started to talk about regrets, but he was having trouble talking, and he knew the end was near for him to a certain extent. I say that tongue in cheek. He kind of knew, but wasn't ready to admit it to himself or accept it fully. But so I relayed that message to my mom. I thought that would be something that I think I would want to know, that my ex-husband or whatever, now granted, that he still, trying to complete that thought first, that he still loved her, that if it was me, I would want to know that. That would be a blessing to hear that. So I've shared that with her because I thought that might bring her some comfort. At the same time, as I'm saying that out loud, I realize that might make her even angrier and more resentful because they were never able to reconcile. Neither one of them was able to get help, get well, get better, change, work on their relationship. It's our family collectively, the 8 of us, is just a cluster of messy relationships and drama and hurt and pain and bad decisions. I have seen my siblings deal with grief in very different ways, but my mom's, and I think that'll play out their grief and my grief will play out in different ways in the coming weeks and months and years. But for the most part, the ones that stand out the strongest are my mom, as I mentioned, then my oldest brother, the class A lab rat narcissist, an antisocial personality disorder. He lived about 3 doors down in the same apartment complex as my dad, hasn't seen him for over a year, as far as I know. Never went to see him in the hospital. But is the first one to be involved in and give feedback in and give his advice, his 2 cents, as far as my dad's estate goes, which is utterly unbelievable to me and so hypocritical, but so par for a narcissist. They think they have a say. They think that they're so smart. Utterly ridiculous. And meanwhile, as we're dispersing my dad's physical assets and his belongings amongst me and my siblings, I have 5 siblings, so there's 6 of us. My brother's taking everything that, well, he's arguing for what he wants with the rest of us, which is kind of a pain, but then he's taking everything else. And I'm like, that stuff, some of this stuff is junk. It just needs to go in the dumpster. Some of it can be donated to Goodwill. Some of it can be passed on, but why is he taking this stuff? Like, he took a handful of shirts out of my dad's closet that are way too big for him. Just this past weekend as we were cleaning up, and it's probably 12 shirts, a handful of shirts. They're way too big for him. They won't fit him. He lives in an apartment, a little 1-bedroom, maybe a 2-bedroom apartment. What is he going to do with all those shirts? They're dress shirts, by the way, and he's a builder. So what is he going to do with 12 dress shirts from my dad? My husband thinks that he might have a sale and collect the dollars and the nickels. And if that's the case, to each his own. Good luck to him. But it's that kind of stuff. A girlfriend of mine said that they thought that's his way of dealing with the grief. Like, he can't handle the fact that he lost his dad and then he'll never get back that precious time. He just hasn't accepted it. He can't. That he had a bad relationship with him, or that he screwed up or owns any responsibility and how the relationship was so bad. Yes, we are the product of my dad and mom. So my dad's not innocent. My brother's not innocent. So that's my oldest brother. And then there's my sister, who is the executor on my dad's estate. And she texted today. She's been odd. She's been an odd one about this grief thing. And I'll explain more when I can wrap my head around it. But just as a for instance, in the end, the family did have to call in hospice to take over because there was nothing further that the medical team could do for my dad. And it was at the point where they just needed comfort care then. And it was probably a matter of 15 minutes between the time the medical team was done and hospice came in that my dad was dead. Like, the medical team was keeping him alive. It was his time. But my sister this morning, she texted my sibling group text platform or thread or whatever, and she made a comment about how the hospital or hospice tried to call her or something and wanted to send her a card or something like that in sympathy. And my sister angrily lashed out and said no one is to get her personal information. And it wasn't just about the personal information. I responded to her, okay, no problem. Out of respect for her, she has the right to say, don't give my personal information out, of course. But the other part of her request was the angry part where she said, she went on like 2 or 3 different text interactions with us saying, I don't ever want to have anything to do with any of those people ever again for the rest of my life. And she was using all these big, extreme words, indicating that she had some seriously strong opinions and feelings about the hospital where my dad was cared for and the hospice team, which blew me out of the water because his nurses were phenomenal. First of all, my sister has her opinions about their care methods. And I understand that, and we have different opinions about that, but my dad was not real good about being his own medical advocate. This is a lot to fill you in on this video, but he should have changed his primary care physician years ago, and he never did, because he's been with the same doctor forever. And not being married, he didn't have a spouse to be his second opinion or to help him understand what was going on with the medical team and his treatments and his medications and all this other stuff. And I don't think his primary care doctor has a half an ounce of brains. I really don't. I think he was a neglectful, overworked, overstressed ass munch, to be honest with you. But back in the summer when my dad was in the hospital the first time, back in July of 22, I asked my dad one-on-one when he got discharged, have you made the decision about whether or not you'd like to switch your primary care physician? And he said, yes, I have. I'm absolutely not switching my primary care physician. I've known this guy for years. He's who I've been going to for years. That's who I'm staying with. And my dad had that right. It was his decision. But that's the part that I think my sister can't grasp, is she can't grasp the fact that he was his own advocate. He made his own decisions and his own choices. My dad, there's one thing I will say about my dad. He was of sound mind when he passed. He just was physically unable to continue living, but he was very much in his right brain. He had no dementia, no Alzheimer's, no mental issues as far as like not being able to comprehend what was going on. The only thing I would say with regards to his understanding is that his reality was skewed. He still believed, even on his dying day, that he might be coming home, and that he needed to figure out and get answers as to why he wasn't being released to go home from the hospital. So that just tells you as far as my dad's reality. And he didn't die by accident, that this was something that was oncoming and spread out for a very long time. So my whole point is everybody's grief looks so different one from the next. You know, I've mentioned my mom, I've mentioned my oldest brother, I've mentioned my sister, and different ways that they're lashing out and behaving and handling this process. And I can speak for me now that I've shed a lot of tears. There's a few things I've been angry about, but they're legit family issues with regards to hidden stuff or the appearance of hidden stuff or secrets or things that are not being handled forthright and open and transparent within my family. But I'm not going to resent or be angry or get wound up about any of that. As I mentioned at the beginning of the year, this is my golden year, 2023, and I aim for this to be a good year of peace, love, and gratitude, of forgiveness, and of a healthy mindset and healthy emotions. And even though it's been a struggle, I have grieved mostly by tears. And with that, I'm going to close this video. Till next time, guys. Grief ain't fun, but it is a part of life. It is an opportunity to learn and grow, like every other opportunity we have in our lives. At the very least, what I've been experiencing at the worst, or at the least, or whatever word you want to use, it's an opportunity for me to learn more and grow more and put more content out there to be of use and help to others. So if you're grieving, I sure hope this video has been helpful. If you have a loved one that's grieving, that you can use this video to encourage or support them, and just understanding the fact that grief looks so different to every person. Grief is tough. Grief is tough. But there's one thing that we can all do that makes everything a little bit easier in life, and that is taking care of you. Till next time. Bye, guys.